Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Many of you may already know that WinWing seems to be releasing all the peripherals that you could possibly want in terms of the Airbus family, and now moving forward into the Boeing family of aircraft within Microsoft Flight Simulator and other flight simulators. In this case, although it's been out for a while, I've finally been able to get my hands on the WinWing MCDU, seeing as it has been released a while ago. I wish I could have got it sooner, but that's how life rolls. But we do have it today. So we are here just taking a tester flight in the EasyJet over from Luton here to Prague, giving the MCDU from WinWing a bit of a run through. I won't go into huge detail into the setup of the functions of the MCDU itself. There are a load of other YouTube channels which have covered that already, and I'm happy to link a few down below for any of you who have the MCDU and wish to know how the settings work. The software that it comes with can be a bit confusing, but with a bit of playing around you can get it working pretty well. We're in the Fenix A320 today, the EasyJet livery from Luton to Prague. The passengers have been boarded, the cargo is just being placed into the aircraft, and once that's done we'll jump back into the cockpit and I'll show you how the MCDU works with, for example, the Fenix aircraft or with a Asobo Airbus aircraft, and how it links together, as well as how it can assist you in the realism of your flights. So back in the cockpit of the Fenix A320, I have the WinWing MCDU sat in front of me on my desk, and I'll zoom in on the MCDU in the airplane itself just to see, or in fact just to show how the WinWing MCDU interacts with the airplane MCDU. I do have the Sim App Pro software from WinWing open on my computer on a secondary monitor, so that's running all the software in the background and connecting the physical module to the simulation module through SimConnect. So I won't touch any of the buttons here, but I will do it all in my physical MCDU module, and you'll see how it interacts with the screen and everything up here. So we can set up flights, set up all the perf or flight plan data as you wish, all externally from the simulator, I guess you could say. So from the MCDU menu, which I'm sure most of you will know is the first screen you'll see once you've turned on your aircraft, we can go from here into the aircraft information page, and you can see as I clicked, you'll see the buttons themselves be depressed as you use them. So nav accuracy upgrade we can cancel, and GPS primary we can clear. I already have the IRS aligned. From there we can go to the init page, do an init request for the SimBrief flight plan, and wait for that to load in. There you go, that's all loaded in. So today we are running as EasyJet flight 45 Bravo Papa, so I'll type that in, Bravo Papa, and that can be inserted into the flight number. Cost index today of 18, and a cruising flight level 370. I do have to remember to not actually touch my mouse and input it using my mouse, as I'm very much used to that. But we'll go through. I see here IRS is already aligned, so we don't need to do that. That's wonderful. We can go straight to the flight plan page and set up the departure. This also should show you a bit of my workflow when it comes to setting up a flight. What I like to do, the route in which I take through the flight plan. So we're taking off from runway 07 through the match to Charlie departure. That'll be that second one. Temporary insert, and we'll go over to Prague and we'll set up the arrival there. Going into the arrival page, we'll be taking the ILS for runway 24 via Star Golop for Sierra. There we go. And via Irazu. Return, temporary insert, and we'll scroll through real quick and just make sure that everything is in. As you can see, there are no, well, so far, there are no flight discontinuities. There's the Irazu flight discontinuity at the end, but that's after the go-around procedure. So, perfect. Oh god, I should have gone the other way, but back up to the top. Back to Luton. Cool. Last bit, if we go to the perf page, there we go, worked the second time, we'll have to actually take the data from the EFB. Aircraft loaded, wonderful. Departure performance, sync the load sheet, and I'll show you the load sheet actually itself on the MCDU. Sync the live weather. Okay, final try. We've got external weather data, we're just going to use that instead. I'm not sure what's going on with Fenix today, but it does not want to give me any weather data. Anyway, wind today will be 180 at 9. Temperature of 18 degrees. And a QNH of 1018. There we go, we can finally do the calculations. There. Okay, so now we have our performance information. You can see that the performance information page looks pretty similar to the MCDU. So we're essentially just going to copy all this across and put it directly into our MCDU. So I'll type this in, 129, 129 for the rotate speed and 132 for the V2 speed. I remember we had a flaps of 3 down, 0.2. There we go, and a flex takeoff temperature of 63. I'll also take the external data and input the engine out acceleration and thrust reduction and acceleration. So we've got 1530 and if I press the right buttons, 1530-1530 for the thrust reduction acceleration. And the engine out acceleration, as we'll be heading southeast, will be 2100. I'll throw up a little screenshot of what I'm looking at right now from Blackbox to get this data so you understand what I'm talking about. But for now, this is the perf page sorted. Last thing that we can do is do the fuel. And if we go back to the ATSU menu, to the AOC, and like we said before, we received this load sheet. We can accept that. So we've got a zero fuel weight of 54.9 and a central weight of 31.2%. We just remember those numbers, 54.9, 31.2. Okay. So 54.9/31.2. That goes in there. We can head back to the init page and one across for the fuel planning. We've got our block fuel already in of 7.0. Just slap a 7 in there. And from our sim brief page and our fuel planning, we can set in the rest of the fuel, or the correct fuel. So the route reserve, we have 0.6. For the alternate airport 1.8, that's already in, and the final of 1.0, that's already in as well. Perfect. For a minimum destination fuel on board of 2.8 tons of fuel. Right, there we go. Now you see how long it takes to set up an aircraft. So we've got our init page sorted, our perf page is sorted, our flight plan is ready. I think we're ready to start pushing back and taxiing. Okay, so as our MCDU is set up, we'll just do the final internal checks and make sure everything's ready. So seatbelt signs can come on, no smoking sign as well. Nav and logo beacon will come on as we will be starting the engine. We'll start the APU so that we can disconnect from the GPU as we push back. Let's see if we can actually get some more. Ooh, I'm playing with the wrong one. There, the integrated lights up. Fuel tanks will come on as we'll need to be starting the engines. You'll see IRS, it's aligned. Everything else up ahead or up on top looks good. We'll wait for that APU to spool itself up, start providing us with some electrical power. From there, we'll start our pushback. APU is available. Head back up the top, slap on the APU bleed, turn off the external power, back to the EFB. Into Fenix, we'll go ground services, turn off the GPU. Departure clearance has been requested automatically through GSX, and it'll start flashing some screens at me. Pushback has begun. We've got the number 2 engine starting up. Once that hits, there we go, it's hitting that 52%. Stick engine 1 on. That will start up now. Pushback is now complete. We can turn off the APU, stick on some taxi lights, set the strobes to auto. Runway turn off, we can turn on. APU bleed can now come off as well. We'll do a little call to the cabin to make sure they're ready. Drop the flaps down to the takeoff position, which is 3 today. That'll be an interesting one. And we'll set the new and lovely from Fenix weather radar on. So we've got weather, turbulence and hazards. That's all sorted. Auto brake set to max. Thank you for telling me. And we'll do a takeoff check once that's ready. There's the cabin.
The cabin is now secure for takeoff.
Perfect. They're all nice and ready. I'll reset that. Do a takeoff config. Takeoff config is normal. Let's get our taxi underway. We've got a nice easy taxi today. I'll just give you a little overview. Coming from the main apron, we'll be following the Bravo taxiway all the way down to the holding point Bravo 1 at runway 07. From there, we'll be taking off on the match to Charlie departure, heading out towards the Luton waypoint here, turning right on 155, and we're climbing up to 5,000 feet, at which point I can actually set that on our altimeter, on our altitude. There, up to 5,000 feet towards Brooklands Park, and then out towards the match waypoint and onwards on this Quebec 295 airway. This should be a pretty easy takeoff, pretty easy departure out of Luton, and then we'll be heading east over the coast, over, I think, either Belgium actually, crossing over Germany and then down into the Czech Republic or into Czechia towards Prague. Nice and simple. Here we are, just holding short of runway 07. See off to the left there. So, and we'll most likely be clear for departure. We'll set the landing lights on. Strobes can come on now. Nose to take off. We'll set the nav and logo lights on. Line up and wait on the runway. We already have our takeoff config set to normal, so everything's ready. Landing lights are on. Auto brake is on. The speed brakes are armed, so we can line up on runway 07. Lined up now on the runway. You can see I've got the perf page set up on the MCDU. Just a quick look over the flight plans. We're taking off runway 07, heading towards the Luton NDB, and then following the match to Charlie departure out to match, and then heading off on the Quebec 295 airway. Let's take it back on the perf page. We've got our V1, VR and V2 speeds, and let's get ready for takeoff. Throttle's up to 50% or 55% to begin with. Release the brakes, and at manual flex speed. $80 knots checked. Bit of a tailwind now. V1 and rotate. Windy takeoff, positive rate, gear can come up. Gear is up. Just following that flight director as best I can. Reduce the throttle down to the climb lever. Level off slightly. And we'll pick up our speed up. In fact, we'll start pushing the flaps up. Flaps 1. raising our speed up towards the slats of the S speed on the speed indicator, climbing up to that 5,000 feet that we were aiming for in the departure. So climb up to 5,000 now. Our transition altitude is in at 6,000 feet, I do believe. Let me just check that once more. Yeah, we've got a transition altitude at 6,000 feet, so we'll level up at 5,000, exit the departure, and as we do that and past 6,000 feet, we'll switch back over to standard barometric pressure. We'll continue this departure out of Luton and the climb up to 37,000 feet for our cruise over to Prague. Hope you enjoyed that takeoff. Do like it if you did. I know I can improve on that, but I think it was alright. Hope you enjoy the rest of the departure, the rest of the flight. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you do so. Very much greatly appreciate that. And enjoy the rest of the video. So we're approaching just about 5 miles outside of the match waypoint. That'll be the end of our departure. Doing so, we'll crank the altitude up to 37,000 feet, which will be the top of our climb and our cruise altitude for today. 37,000 feet. Also not caught, but you'll see that the MCDU has switched over to the climb page, which I'm also got sat in front of me on my WINWING MCDU in front of me. So we can actually have a look through the next phases. That'll be the cruise phase, God if I can say that right, onto the descent, and finally the approach page, which we'll fill out once we start or before we start our descent down towards Prague. Half a mile to match now. Just passing it. And in doing so we can reset the optimal climb, there we go, to 37,000 feet. And you can see it's slowly pitching up. There we go, it'll do its optimal climb up to that 37,000 feet. Leaving 5,000 feet now. Here's that 10,000 feet mark we were looking for. Passing through it, we'll turn off the landing lights, runway turn off, and nose lights can come off as well, of course, and the seatbelt signs can be switched off. Non-smoking, of course, will always stay on, but the passengers can now walk around freely. We'll continue our climb up to 37,000 feet once we hit our cruise altitude. Continue on from there over to Prague. Got a nice view out over the, I guess that's the Thames estuary now, or at least the eastern coast of England, over to France and or Belgium, across Germany and down to Czechia towards Prague. Just about reached our cruise altitude of flight level 370, or rather 37,000 feet. Crossing over the English Channel North Sea over to the Netherlands, not France or Belgium, as I previously said, and obviously got very wrong. I need to catch up on my geography. But crossing the English Channel North Sea over to the Netherlands, we'll cross the Netherlands completely over into Germany, then down into Czechia towards Prague. A nice gentle cruise, hopefully, today over to Prague. So I hope you enjoyed this flight so far. Let's get towards the descent section. I'll show a bit more of the MCDU, the WINWING MCDU, how that can function during the descent section, for example inputting the arrival data into the MCDU and setting it up for landing. Enjoy the rest of the flight, and I'll catch you when we descend. We are about 50 miles or so from our top of descent, and I've just had a notification come up on the MCDU. If I pan down real quick, it is asking us now to enter the destination data you can see here. So we'll go through that with the WINWING MCDU, so I can clear that message. Head over to the perf page, to the next phase of the flight, heading through descent, and over to the approach performance page. Now I'm pretty sure, if I pan back over here, that the weather still does not work. Correct. Right, so what that means is I'll have to do this externally. So once again, taking the black box 711 app. From there we're looking at a QNH of 1027. Type that in and input that in there. A temperature of 23. Magnetic wind is saying 243 at 6. I am looking at 190 at 9. So we'll replace that real quick. Transition flight level. If we take a look at the Navigraph chart, the ILS runway 24, you see the transition altitude at 5,000. So we will change that over to 5,000. Invalid entry. Okay. Let's try 050. See if it likes that any better. Flight level with 050. Perfect. Okay. And after that, we're looking at the barometric. So of course, as soon as I close it, I need to open up Navigraph again. So looking at the barometric minimums, we're at ILS 1358. For the barometric minimums, that'll be a radio altitude of 200. And we'll be sticking with the full landing config. We'll have a landing speed of 128 plus 5, so 133. We'll be looking for 133 as we are landing. Cool. That is the descent data sorted. Looking down here once more, you can see we're now 5 nautical miles from top of descent. Just have a quick look at our charts to see what we need to be looking at. We need to be dropping down to 4,000 feet for our approach, and as you can see from the arrival charts, there's no restrictions, so we can just set this straight to 4,000 feet on the altitude bug and start our descent. So looking at the charts, we'll start the arrival at Golop, and I think we're following this line here, dropping down to 4,000 feet here. We'll follow it down. We'll do our optimum descent, so it won't be at 4,000, but minimums of 4,000. Doing this continual left-hand turn to Arazu, at which point that will be the start of our approach for the ILS of runway 24 into Prague. Just continuing our descent now down, approaching 10,000 feet. I'm just trying to manage the speed brakes as best I can to keep within this optimal green dot descent. There we go, down through 10,000, reducing the speed down to 250 as well. We'll turn on our landing lights. Nose lights can go to taxi, and the runway turn-off lights as well. Seatbelt lights will, seatbelt signs in fact, will turn back on. About to complete that final right-hand turn, so we can drop the speed down to green dot speed. Today is, if we look at the MCDU, 202. So we'll drop that down to 202. For the managed speed, once we hit that green dot speed, we can start with some flaps as well. I'll retract the speed brake, arm it for the approach, and set some auto brakes as we're passing through 5,000. We'll reset the QNH to 1027. You see the runway up ahead. We'll start reducing our speed now. In fact, I think we can go straight for an approach. Select the ILS bugs. Reduce the speed further down to 182 for slat speed. Localizer and glide slope are now alive. If we need to, as we get closer, we can drop the gear down just to increase the drag, reduce the speed a little bit, whatever we need. And we need more drag, so let's drop the gear. We'll be landing at 133 today. Speed is reducing slowly. Flaps 3. And full flaps for landing. Coming in a bit hot, but I've been messing around with the MCDU, so I'll blame that. But we'll let it drop down a little bit further before we take over on the autopilot, just to ensure that's, yeah, great GPU memory capacity, just to make sure that the speed is established. There we go, we'll take over the autopilot now and hand land this plane as best as we can. A little bit off center, trying to go back to the right. And there comes the wind. Way too low. Throttle that glide slope back down. A little bit of a crosswind, but that's alright. Just off the center line. Try and bring that back in the flare. And a little bit of lag as we come further down.
40, 30,
Retard.
retard.
Bit of a bounce, but oh god. I'll call it. Reverse is out. Green. A little bit of an SPS drop there, as you can see, coming down into Prague. Not the most awful landing. Not the best approach, of course, but I've been messing around staring at MCDU and trying to figure out the weather. We'll start up the APU and take this high-speed exit off to the left. Off the runway, turn off the lights. Turn off the runway turn-off lights. Strobe can return back to auto, or in fact, keep it off. And let's tidy the aircraft. Flaps coming back up. Spoilers up as well. Just so that we can have a nice clean aircraft. We'll be taxiing back via Delta. We'll have to cross over runway 12. Just taxiing up to the terminal here. Prague, we're looking for gate number 18 on the right hand side, which should be all these GSX AI vehicles over here on the right hand side. So catering trucks and cargo vehicles ready for us. Our final turn into the gate. Can turn off our taxi lights, not to blind anyone as we approach. APU is available. We will park up and shut down. There we go, everyone. Thank you very much for following along on this flight. A bit of a hectic one as usual. Interesting takeoff, interesting landing, but I hope that gave you a bit of an overview into the WINWING MCDU, how it functions inside Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and for example with the Fenix A320, the integration between the MCDU physically and the one in the sim. If you're interested in it, of course you can look up the WINWING site itself. I'm not affiliated or sponsored in any way, I just think it's pretty cool. I enjoy it, and if you're looking at getting it, I hope that you enjoy it as well. And of course, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do feel free to like and subscribe if you did. Check out my other videos, any other playlists on the channel, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.